says recording, but I think that's all right. Okay, good. Let's start that. Thanks, Bob, for being with us. Thanks for doing that. I really appreciate that. You're just so people know who you are. I did prepare a little thing here. You have an extensive background, obviously, in automotive and tech,
Right.
working with Toyota, Ford, AMD, and you have, I think, worked a lot into lean manufacturing environment, especially the
Correct.
last 15 years as a offering consultant services and having your own company called Industrial Andons and working with companies, helping them with the visual signals. So thanks for being with us.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
I think most of our viewers know what a visual signal is, but just so we start on the same line, can you explain in your own words very quickly
Yeah,
where the word
sure.
comes from and everything? Yeah.
Yeah, so Andon is Japanese for paper lantern. When I was working with some of the Japanese senseis, what they basically told me was back in the 50s when they first started putting lights on the assembly line, so that when they would had an issue, they would turn the light on, it would turn a melody on and signal for somebody to come and help. They didn't know what to call the thing, and it kind of reminded them of the paper lanterns from restaurants. So that's kind of where it got coined as an andon system. So that's where it kind of started. So sort of like a Kleenex or something like that. It reminded them
Right.
of those lights. So
Okay, good. Thanks. And in terms of a lot of people knows that I've seen an end-on system on a piece of equipment, but not a lot of people use it as a tool for material management or material handling. Um, how can it be useful in that purpose?
yeah, so just like you said, people are familiar with it on whether a piece of equipment's running or not. But the nice thing with an andon system is it kind of gives that same level of visibility to your manual workstations. It can be
Right.
integrated with your equipment as well, but where it's really useful is because I mean the majority of most manufacturers are most of their stations are manual operations still, and we don't have good visibility into that. So what the Andon system does is enables you to keep one, to keep your team members at the line doing what you have them there doing, but it also gives them a way to signal to the respondents when they need something. And largely what we see is the system being used in two primary ways. One is the different colors representing a sense of urgency, but
Right.
probably the way that I see it being used more effectively and most often is that each color light represents a different respondent. So what I
Oh
mean
yeah.
would be,
Okay.
red being, say, material handling, yellow being maintenance, green being quality, uh, yellow being, well, let me back up. Let me start that. You can edit
Okay.
that section out.
Yeah. Yeah. No problem.
So, so, so what we see most of the time is the system being used two different ways. And with that, one is the different colored lights. So your standard system has a red, yellow, green, and blue light on it. Using those as a sense of urgency. So red being you're dead in the water, down to the other end is, blue, I maybe have a question that's may or may not be work related, and anywhere in between. But the way we see it being used more often that seems to be more effective is each of the lights representing a different respondent group. And so in that way, you're looking at, say, red being for, say, maintenance. Yellow commonly is used for material handling, green supervision, blue for quality engineering, something like that. So that way, depending on what the folks need, they can trigger for that respondent group to come. Now, of course, at the end of the day, it's just a light. It can be whatever you want it to mean for your location. And over the last 20 years of working with factories, we customize them quite a bit
Oh
for
yeah.
everyone's situation and stuff. So that's kind of the primary ways we see it being used, but most effectively is when I see it getting used for each light being a different group to be called.
Okay. What are the exact different, like you said, not triggers, but piece of equipment? I know you said obviously there's the lights that, but you were talking the other day that they could have a signal on a cell phone or like a SMS or like an email. Um,
Right. Yeah. So the traditional Andon systems, you go into a Toyota plant like where I used to work. What you're going to see is you're going to see cables running down the line.
right.
Somebody's going to reach over and hit that. It's going to turn the light on at the workstation. They usually have it's a static board out in the main aisleway that their station number is going to light up. And that's going to light up and you're going to hear a melody. Each line has its own melody. So if you hear Mary Had a Little Lamb at 100 decibels, that's the paint area or the weld area. So depending on the melody you hear. So really what I did was when I was an internal lean instructor at Toyota, I worked a lot with a lot of different departments and systems. And so when I left Toyota and started working with other companies, consulting, one of the first things I saw that a lot of companies needed was an Andon system. And the problem is a stationary system like what they use is very expensive and time consuming and difficult to wire up and set up. And then it's also not very flexible. So
Okay.
what we did then was invented a wireless based system. So it's proprietary wireless, so it's not touching your Wi-Fi or your networks. But then what it does is it's very quick to deploy. It's easy to add to like a flow, like one of your all's flow racks and add a sensor to it or tie it to a piece of equipment. There's a lot of different ways it can be set up. But there's probably three main components. You've got what we call the floor signal station. That's the unit that actually goes at the line that your team members are going to trigger or your equipment's going to trigger. Then there's the plant signal unit. That's kind of your unit that is going to play the melody. And we see that being used about 50% of the time because as we move towards, and we've updated now to having the web-based system. So the third component is the web-based system now. So instead of having
Okay.
a static display board, now what you have is a dynamic board. It's web-based. So now wherever you want to see the status of your line, you can bring that up on your cell phone, on your computer. You can put up monitors all over your plant, and you can actually create different views. So you may want to have a departmental view that just shows, this specific line, but then, up at the main area of the plant, you want to have a plant-wide view that shows all the stations, and you have the ability to do that. And it's going to show every station. It'll show, each is basically a box and a grid, and it's going to show you a different color. So that's kind of the display visualization side of it. At the same time, then, anytime a light is turned on, the system can automatically send out emails and text messages to whoever needs to receive that. And then the system you can set up as many escalations as you want. So,
Okay.
for yourself, for example, if there's an issue on the floor, somebody turns a light on, you don't necessarily need to know every
Right.
time a light comes on. That's what you have team leaders for and other folks to address that. But at some point in time, after say 10 minutes, then maybe it goes to the supervisor. They get a notification that says, hey, this has been on for 10 minutes. Then at 15 minutes, ultimately at some point, you're going to get a text, or an email that says, hey, this area's been down for 30 minutes. Because at that point, I am concerned because it's, shutting down the operation, and I may need to be involved to help with assisting that. In addition to those notifications, the system's going to record all of that data as
Right.
well. And then the nice part is even if it does have a way to do an incident report against it to say, I can classify that and say, was that a materials issue, and add more detail to it. But even if I don't go to that level, just knowing the occurrences and duration of your issues helps you to focus and say, gee, station 5 had a lot of maintenance calls last week. Maybe we need to go do a deep dive there and see it. And this was, I actually just printed out a quick copy of a report. So this would be one that kind of shows, so this is for one line. So your first page kind of aggregates all of your issues across the entire line. But then after that, each individual station, it's going to break out each individual location and kind of show you, how many of each light did you have. So again, it's going to show you the occurrences and the duration. It's going to show you each individual occurrence, and then if information has been added to it, that all gets recorded. So then you can go back and filter that data, and actually, have it more actionable. So ideally,
Right.
You start fixing stuff, and ultimately, the ideal condition is you never need the Andon system. You don't turn it on. We haven't gotten there yet, but
Right. But I guess at the end, the most important part is to fix the problems that keep happening with the help of
right.
the report, and probably
Yeah.
going on your top
And
three
that's
issues.
for, and so, and like I said, though, that's where, even if you're using the system, like we see a lot of folks do, is using it for material handling. So it's basically like an electronic Kanban system,
Okay.
to where, okay, I need a part or I'm getting low, so I turn the yellow light on. Material handlers, they can have a, inexpensive tablet mounted on their fork truck or tugger, and all they have on that tablet is the monitor screen, and you can actually set up a monitor view that's only going to show the yellow lights. So they're not going to see maintenance calls or engineering calls. They're only going to see the yellow light. So a yellow light pops up. They don't have to sit there burning propane all day long, running in circles. They can wait when a yellow light pops up. They go directly to that area, see what they need. But now you've also got some data around, how long was the light on for? That's basically your response time. So you can kind of measure things like that as well. So that, the good part is, there may not even be anything to fix there. You're just monitoring to see where it's at. But you're starting to get the kind of data that you're used to getting from your equipment,
Yeah.
from your manual operations. And when 80% of your plant is manual operations, and
Right.
you don't have that level of data, I mean, that's huge what you can start doing with it. And you know I, I mentioned this a little bit, tongue in cheek, because people can take it the wrong way, but you always hear about OEE, overall equipment effectiveness. Well, in some respect, what you're getting is OEEE, is overall equipment and employee effectiveness. I mean, because at the end of the day, you're in a factory to make money. You have to produce at a certain level, at a certain rate. You got to be hitting your tack times. And, so this does help give you information to just, go and look, are my employees fighting with a piece of, equipment that hasn't been PM'd? Is it a training issue? We went to a new model and we didn't, update our standard work. So the, employees are having to fight with trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing. What's the issue? So this just helps to highlight, hey, something's going on over here.
Right.
Let's go look at it. So it helps to highlight some of those areas where you need to go work and make some improvements.
And last time we were together, I remember we had a really nice flow rack with sensors with a
Mm-hmm.
two-bin system. Can you talk a bit more about that? How is it something really complicated to put together? Is it something just for Toyota, or is it like a
No,
small
so
business could? Yeah.
there's actually, there's a lot of different ways that can be done. We did a system very similar to what you were talking about there for it was a testing lab. They test, bodily fluids and do all sorts of
Okay.
things like that. We did, hundreds of stations there where, we used little infrared sensors, and they had just that. It was a two-bin system where if both bins were in place, light was green. If they removed either bin, then light went yellow. If they removed both, light went red. And then those also sent, obviously the boards would turn on, so they could immediately
Okay.
see, okay, we've got 100 stations out there on the floor where they're testing. So as soon as one goes yellow, they would know, okay, we we can replenish that one. As soon as it goes red, they know they better get over there fairly quick because they've got both bins removed. So we customize systems like that all the time. From a simple single trigger, the system's user friendly to where the customers can add a switch themselves. It's a
Okay.
basic, the way we design the circuitry, it's a basic contact closure input. So they can basically throw a relay in there. And so with the system, we kind of have the standard system without, if I were to pull a unit right off the shelf, there's basically two inputs for each light on the standard
Okay.
system. So you've got two for the red, yellow, green, and blue. If you tie, and normally what we do is we tie in, the switch or the little key fob remote. That usually turns on the first input, and that turns the light on solid. The second input will turn it on flashing.
Right.
So right off the bat, you've got 8 inputs. So what a lot of times folks will do is they'll use the first input for the person if they've got an issue to turn a light on. The other inputs they can use for limit switches, sensors, whatever they want, and those can be something else, whether it's the machine, if it's tied to a piece of equipment, whatever you want. And then there's 7 additional inputs that you can add a white light into the system. And again, with the 5th light, again, it has a solid and a flashing. And then there's 5 more inputs that don't turn any lights on, but they can be used to trigger, for if it's a material handling issue, for a part, whatever it is. It can be used for that. It can be used for cycle counting something. It's there for whatever you want to use it for. And we've seen a lot of customers use them a lot of different ways.
Okay. And going back to what you were saying about the material handler, do you think having the report could probably help to optimize the route for delivering materials? Because that's a common issue I see, that now having, okay, I know that this line is very often being yellow, for example, so we could probably yeah,
absolutely. I mean, because again, that's where we worked with somebody about 2 years ago, and they had a lot of flow racks. In fact, I think they were Ural stuff in there, and they were looking at adding some limit switches onto the units, but they had some pretty small bins and a lot of parts there. And so the question was, and obviously I want to sell folks as much stuff as I can, but at the same time, it's got to be, I'm a reasonable person. I run a factory too, so I gotta, you look at the costs on stuff.
right.
And ultimately, the issue when we looked at it was going to be fairly expensive to get enough of the floor signal stations to have enough inputs to cover every single unit, every single part, every single bin that they had.
Yeah.
So actually what we ended up doing with them was they had Kanban cards on all their bins. And so what they would do though is, as they would pull a Kanban card out, they had a little slot and it had the limit switch in it, so that as soon as they put a card in the slot, that would hit the switch. So they basically, for a flow rack, and I think they broke it up into a couple areas because they got a handful of inputs there available, because they kind of had it broken up into, they had a 2-bin kind of area. They had specific to what that unit was, whatever product they were running. They had it broken up into a couple. So they had a couple of these, slots that they would put the Kanban card into. So it didn't matter which of these 4, of sections of the flow rack it came from. When they pull it, they put it into that, pocket that hit the switch. That then sent the specific note out to them, because I think they had, like, for their 2-bin system, they basically had a tugger with a cart that had kind of all the parts on it. So once they came around to it, they could just switch out whichever one it was. And by the time material handling got there, it may have been, they might have had 2 or 3 parts that needed swapped out. So they, it's always interesting to see what kind of things we can come up with working with the customers to make it, cost effective, but still give them what they need in order to operate effectively.
Right. And honestly, do you see your client really looking at the report and trying to fix the issue? It's more of just firefighting the problem when it happens?
Yeah, so I kind of see 3 levels really with most of my customers. So at the one level, I see folks that primarily use, what they use the system for is they use the web, what we call the web monitor. So the display that shows, what lights are on where, and the notifications. So the emails and texts.
Oh
So
yeah.
I see, so a lot of customers use it at that level.
Okay.
They never look at the data. They don't look at anything. They're just purely using it as a, pretty elaborate Andon system that, to shorten the response times.
Right.
The next level is the folks that do look at, mainly they'll do this report, and they're just they're looking primarily at the, just like with most downtime stuff, looking at the occurrences and duration of the issues, of the Andon issues.
Okay.
And then that triggers them to go look at an area. If they're seeing an uptick in,
Okay.
calls, like, now if they're using yellow for material handling, as long as nothing looks out of the ordinary, like they're not seeing the times get longer or something like that, they use that to kind of monitor with. But all of a sudden, if they're seeing a lot of red, maintenance calls from a certain piece of equipment, they're like, let's go over and take a look at that. Maybe something's changed. So they're using it at a medium level. They're not doing anything more with it. Then the top level is they've actually gone in and they're putting incident reports in. There's data that they're like in this, in this example that I showed. I don't know let me see if I can get it close enough. You can see where they've actually input data in, so that like each of these things they've recorded, multiple tiers down as far as saying, look, this was a maintenance issue, it was CNC machine, it was a fixture issue. And then they'll pull that raw data and filter it by, say, okay, maintenance guys, here's your top 3 items. Quality, here's your top 3.
Okay.
Doing it that, and that's very effective. So I see, and it's probably it's a smaller percentage of the folks that are doing it at that level, but the ones that do get to that level and use it, they really, really do see some benefit from that. And I don't recommend customers to actually go to that level first.
Right, exactly. Like
start at the base level and just get people used to responding to the stuff, gaining some visibility into it. And then you can start looking at, just the raw data, because you get so much for it. It's the 80-20 rule. I mean, you're going to get so much from that, just the raw data, looking at the occurrences and duration. And then ultimately, usually what I'll say is, okay, don't then start collecting, doing incident reports around every station. If the general data is pointing to a certain area, well, go do that and start doing your, root causing and doing some more data collection around just that work center. When it gets good, okay, move to the next area. Now, eventually, if you can do that on an ongoing basis for all the areas, great. But you got to make sure you got the infrastructure behind it in order to be able to manage that data. Otherwise, you're wasting time.
And where it's pretty far away from just the line on Toyota that's probably where that was probably not recorded. It was just to have the supervisor come faster. No.
Well, when the team leaders would show up, we would record that data on our hour-by-hour chart.
Okay.
So it would get recorded, but it was completely manual. Which then was and we didn't necessarily get it recorded down to a finite level. It was more based off of if we were supposed to hit 52 vehicles that hour, if we only hit 48, we would know we were down for 4 minutes that hour, and then we'd have a little blurb around what it was. Now that may not have been specific, because that 4 minutes may have been broken out across 5 times we stopped for 20 seconds or something, and each of those might have been different. So a lot of times what got recorded on the board happened to be the thing that stuck in their mind the most. And then when the line might shut down for an extended period and we're looking for stuff to do, then we'd go grab this pile of papers from underneath there, because each day would get torn off and it would kind of go in a stack. Then eventually we'd get around to kind of sorting through those and start, trying to collect data around it. So it was still pretty crude. And we've actually done some systems for some of the Toyota plants, and I was actually back in my old plant in Kentucky.
Oh, really?
a couple years ago, they brought me in for a couple days for some consulting and some other stuff. And, they're still recording them, the hour
Oh,
by
yeah,
hour
that.
stuff
Oh,
there
really?
and,
That was my
doing
question.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it works and it's effective, but you miss a lot of stuff there.
Okay.
But I'm not going to argue with what, Toyota's doing, obviously. So, um, but no, this was trying to take that, how do we make it easy for folks to get better quality, complete and accurate information in order to help make better decisions. So that was ultimately the goal of this when we started.
Good. Hey, Bob, we're pretty much finished. Thanks a lot again. How
Yeah.
can you tell us quickly how people can reach you if they want to know more? Or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, go to our website, industrialandons.com, or search for an Andon, and we should pop up in your in the search, or give us a call, 866-290-7551. The rule in our place is if I am available, I will be the person to answer the phone. So
Okay.
that's kind of the default. I want to be if somebody has a question, I want to be able to answer their question completely and efficiently. If I'm not available, you'll get to talk to one of our other, lovely folks. But yeah, feel free to give us a call anytime or email us. My email is simple, just bob@industrialandons.com.
Oh, that's pretty
So,
simple. Okay, good. Hey, again, thanks for your time, and I'll
yeah,
what I'll do is I'll send you the recording once we edit everything with the
sure.
image, the video, and you tell me what you want to change, and we'll probably play around with the
Yeah,
recording. So, and I'll
yeah,
I'll probably send you something in about 3 weeks. Whenever
cool.
you have the chance to send me the end-ons, I'll install it. I'll probably have to. I'll probably give you a call just to program it, or give you my team viewer so you can do it distance
Yeah.
remotely.
Do you want me to, and I'm fine either way, do you want the receiver